We're glad that you've joined us today. And as many of you know, PRSA is a great organization to network with others and help each other out. And so it's one of the great benefits of our organization is that we can all teach each other something a little different. So every week we're doing these webinars. Today we have Sam Horn with us, and I'm very pleased that she's able to join us. She's the CEO of the Intrigue Agency and Tung Fu Training Institute has been featured on NPR and the New York Times. And her clients include Cisco, Intel, Amgen, Capital One, Nationwide, as well as many others. She's done 3 TEDx talks and has written 9 books, which include Pop, Tung Fu, and the Washington Post bestseller, Got Your Attention. So she's been endorsed by a number of different people, including Dan Pink, Kathy Ferrazzi, Tony Robbins, and a former Oprah producer, Sheri Salata, who says Sam Horn is one of the bright lights and most accessible wisdom sharers in our country today. So Sam, thank you for being here today, and with no further ado, if you'd like to start, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Chris. I agree with Arthur Rubinstein, who said, I have found if you love life, life will love you back. I love this program, and to help you love it back, I am not going to waste your valuable time and mind on ivory tower theories that have no relevance in your world. We're going to jump right into real life ideas you can use immediately. So a 3-minute preview of how and why I came up with Tung Fu, which is soft skills in stressful times, and why it's a bottom line win for you, everyone in your organization, and everyone you deal with. And then we'll jump into some words to lose and words to use. Sound good? Okay, first the backstory is that 30 years ago, Dr. Ray Oshiro from the University of Hawaii asked me to do a program on conflict resolution. Well, at our first break, there was a gentleman sitting in the front row. He didn't even get up to go get a cup of coffee. He just sat there gazing off into space. Now, I was curious, and I went over, I said, what are you thinking? And he said, Sam, I'm a real estate broker. He said, I deal with some really challenging and demanding people. They seem to think they can treat me any way they want to, and I'm tired of it. He said, I thought you were going to teach us some zingers to fire back at people and put them in their place. He said, that's not what this is about, is it? And I assured him that this is not about putting people in their place. It's about putting ourselves in their place so we can respond with compassion instead of contempt. And he was the one who said, I'm a student of martial arts. He said, I've studied karate, taekwondo, judo. He said, what you're talking about is like a verbal form of kung fu, isn't it? Eureka! You're right. It's kind of like a tung fu. And that's what tung fu or soft skills is. It's just like martial artists. We don't go out looking for fights. And if people pick a fight with us, we don't flail back and make it worse. We use the art and the skill and the philosophy of these techniques to disarm and diffuse conflicts. In fact, we use these techniques to prevent conflicts from happening in the first place. And if they do, to handle them with gracious proactivity so that we turn conflict into cooperation. Now, if that sounds good, I have picked the 10 most frequently asked soft skills that we can focus on, and we're gonna rock and roll. Carrie Fisher was one of our favorite keynoters at the Maui Writers Conference. I helped start and run that for 17 years. And Carrie took the stage, grabbed the lectern, leaned in and said to our audience, instant gratification takes too long. She's right. You've carved time out of your day to be here, so let's jump right into it. So now I hope you have paper and pen, because everything that our best-selling authors at the Maui Writers Conference talked about, they didn't agree on anything. It's like, you've got to write first thing in the morning. Dave Barry said, I never get going until the afternoon. Terry Brooks said, you have to work with an outline. And let's see, Elizabeth George would say, I never use an outline. Do you know what they agreed on? Ink it when you think it. So if you will ink it when you think it, you can share these ideas with your employees. You can share them at home with your family. And I guarantee you, they are going to help us treat people with the respect that we all want, need, and deserve. So let's jump right into it. And our very first tip is, would you like to know how to turn impatience into empathy with 4 words? Here's what they are. Here's the story. It's at last Sunday, I was walking here in the foothills of Boulder, and I thought, I haven't called my Aunt Kay in a long time. So I sat down under a trade tree, picked up my phone, and called her. Well, lucky me, she answered. Now, Aunt Kay is 80 years old, and I asked what she was doing, and she is still volunteering at a reception desk at her local hospital. Her shift is from 4 until 8. And I asked her in these times of COVID what it was like, and she said it was really stressful because their policy is no visitors or 1 visitor per patient per day. Well, she was there last week, and this woman ran in and ran up to the reception desk, and she said that her daughter had just texted her from the ER and said to come as fast as she could. Well, Kay called the ER and found that there was someone with the daughter, which meant that the mother couldn't see her. So as you can imagine, the mom is frantic. Now, here's the thing. Over on the left, reactions to lose. When the mother starts chewing 80-year-old Aunt Kay out, she could have thought, I don't get paid enough to deal with this. You know, it's not my fault. Don't blame me. It's like, I don't deserve this. She could have reacted. She could have been frustrated. She could have been impatient. So over on the left, actually put frustrated. Because please think of someone you're frustrated with. Someone, and you don't like the way they're talking to you, and you don't like the way that they're treating you, and you don't deserve it, and it's not your fault. Over on the right, ask yourself these 4 words. How would I feel? Because instead of reacting to this person who was yelling at her, Aunt Kay asked herself, how would I feel if my daughter was in the ER and I was being told that I couldn't be with her? I'd probably be a little upset too. And it helped her say these words, I'm trying to help you if you'll let me. Over on the right, please put the words, how would I feel? And then I'm trying to help you if you'll let me. And then she responded with her empathy and putting herself in this woman's shoes. She got proactive. She called back to the ER and she asked, who was the person with the daughter? It was the Uber driver who had brought her in. So see, they were able to thank the Uber driver and ask him to leave so that the mom could be with her daughter. And all because Aunt Kay responded with compassion instead of reacting with contempt. All because she put herself in the other person's shoes and said, how would I feel? And we may not like it, we may not agree with it, we may understand it. And that gives us the empathy and the compassion to respond with kindness instead of cruelty. Let's go to the next idea. Now, I'm on a schedule because if we've got 45 minutes and I've got 10 ideas, that's like 4 minutes idea, time for question, and then Chris said we'll open it up for questions afterwards. So as I go through this, if you have pushback, or if you think, well, Sam, it sounds good in theory, doesn't work in practice, or I tried that before and it backfired, please go ahead and put your comments in chat. We welcome them, and Chris is going to interrupt me in a few minutes and ask one of your questions, and we'll have a break right in the middle where you have a chance to do an exercise so that we can make this interactive, because I'd love to hear your success stories and your questions. All right, let's move on to tip 2. When people complain, don't explain. Over on the left, put the word explain. Because if people complain and we explain, those explanations come across as excuses. In fact, people will often get angrier because they feel we're not being accountable. So what do we do instead? Well, here's the example, and here's what to do instead. After 5 months in COVID now, I finally went for a long overdue mani-pedi last week. I went to my favorite salon, which had been closed and had just reopened. Well, I'm finishing, and a woman who had been waiting out in her car stormed in and shouted at the owner, "I've been waiting out in my car for an hour. My appointment was an hour ago." And the owner explained, "Oh, I'm sorry, but we have to sterilize after everyone leaves, and it's taking a lot longer than we thought." Well, the woman kept complaining, "Well, you should have spaced your appointments further. You should have told me about it." And the owner said, "I'm sorry, we just didn't expect it." And back and forth they went. Why? It's because the owner kept explaining. And when we explain, when people complain, we perpetuate the complaint. Over on the right, please put the A train, A. A for agree, A for apologize, A for act, A for agree. The two most powerful ways to turn conflict into cooperation is to say, "You're right. Your appointment was an hour ago." A for apologize. "And I'm sorry you've ended up waiting so long." A for act. "And we have a chair available now. Welcome. It's so good to see you again." Complaint over, because she took the A train instead of explaining. Now, by the way, there was a gentleman in a public workshop. He had a Homer moment. He went, "No." I said, "What?" He said, "Sam, I wish I'd known this Friday." I said, "Why?" He said, "I was going to pick my wife up after work. We were going out for dinner and a movie." He said, "Well, I left on time. You know what happened. There was an accident on the freeway." He said, "It was gridlock. I couldn't move forward. You couldn't exit the freeway. Everyone just turned off our engines. We just sat there." He said, "It was almost an hour late by the time I got downtown, and I could see my wife pacing up and down the curb." He said, "I pulled up. She yanked that car door open. She said, 'You were supposed to be here an hour ago.' He said, 'Don't blame me. I've been stuck in traffic all this time.' She said, 'How was I supposed to know that? I didn't know if you were in some ditch somewhere, if you've forgotten.' He said, 'My cell phone died. There was no way.' Back and forth they went. He said, "If I'd known about the A train when I pulled up and she yanked the car door open, I would have said," and she said, "You were supposed to be here an hour ago," I would have said, "You're right. And I'm sorry you ended up waiting so long. And in the future, if I'm going to try and pick you up on a Friday, I'm going to build in a cushion for Murphy's Law." Now, there was a gentleman in that workshop, and he put his hand up. He said, "Why should he apologize? He didn't do anything wrong." I said, "Have you heard the saying, 'We can be right or we can be happy'?" I said, "I think we can apologize when something goes wrong, and it doesn't mean we're responsible. It just means we're commiserating with that person who is pacing up and down for an hour wondering what happened." Let's go on to our next technique. And number 3 is John F. Kennedy said, "Our task is not to fix the blame for the past. It's to fix the course for the future." When people are arguing, they're usually talking about who dropped the ball, who didn't do what they were supposed to do, who didn't do it the way they were supposed to do, and it serves no good purpose. Over on the left, put arguing, disagreeing, because it usually is fixing the blame for the past. That's why when people are arguing, we stop it with this hand gesture. No, not that one. This one. See, you can go around the world. Tung Fu is sold in 17 languages around the world. If you put your hand up, now not in their face, this isn't offensive or an affront, just about face high. If you put your hand up like this, it will cause a pause. Because if you try to talk over people who are arguing, what will they do? Talk louder. If we put our hand up, they'll usually pause, and that gives us a chance to put our verbal foot in the door. And guess what we say on the right? This won't help. This won't help. We could spend the rest of the day arguing about who's to blame for this. It won't undo it. Instead, let's get in touch with that client, apologize for what happened, reassure them it's not going to happen again so they will trust us with their account. Or here are some more words. Let's not do this. Let's not do this. Blaming each other, we could instead and move the blame for the past to the course for the future. I have a friend who used to live on Maui, 4 doors down from me, and she and their family went on a family vacation. And when they came back, they walked into the house. The place smelled to high heaven. They started walking around trying to figure out where the smell was coming from. They walked in the kitchen. The refrigerator door was standing wide open. Anne said, "The blaming began." "Well, you were the last one in the house. Don't blame me. You were the one who got..." And she said, "I remembered that technique. I went, time out." I went, time out. This won't get the refrigerator cleaned up. Instead, let's everyone pitch in, take care of this mess. And from now on, when we're leaving for a couple days, someone's got to be in charge of going around and closing things up and shutting things down. Next time people are arguing, it serves no good purpose. Time out. Let's not do this, and move them to finding solutions instead of finding fault. All right, how about tip number 4? How about if people are disagreeing, they're probably using a little 3-letter word that actually causes conflict. So let me put you in the scene of a situation, and then we'll say what to say instead of this word to lose. There's a word to use that can turn that resentment into rapport, that resistance into receptivity. So I was on a virtual meeting recently, and the host waited about 5 minutes for latecomers, which of course penalized everyone who was there on time. What's that about? And he used 7 buts in the first 60 seconds. Now, I know because I counted them and I could feel the mood of the group, even though we were scattered around the country. He said, "Well, I know we're supposed to start at 9, but we've got a lot of latecomers, so we're going to wait." And then he said, "We wanted you to be able to ask questions, but this platform won't allow it. And we were going to have breakout rooms so that you could have a chance to swap best practices and updates, and the platform won't allow it." And he said, "And we were really looking forward to meeting in Las Vegas, but of course that went away." And that word "but," please put it over on the left. It causes so much damage. Over on the right, please put the word "and." "I hear what you're saying, and we're supposed to start at 9 o'clock, and we will wait 30 more seconds. We're so glad that you're on time, and we're going to honor that by starting in 30 seconds. We were really looking forward to Las Vegas, and that went away, and we have planned a virtual program that we hope will keep you engaged from start to finish. We were planning on having questions, and this platform doesn't allow it. And if you could please enter your questions into chat, our host is monitoring the dashboard and is going to be asking your questions so that you get them answered and you feel seen and heard." I'll always remember another public workshop. A woman put her hand up. I could see the emotions working on her face. And I said, "What?" And she said, "Sam, I'm an English teacher." She said, "I've been thinking about what you've been saying. I've been trying to think of an exception to it. And I realized I use that word 'but' all the time." "Well, you would have gotten an A on your test, but you didn't see the 3 questions on the back of the page. I know you were looking forward to the field trip, but the prices of the bus went up. We can't afford it anymore." She said, "Do you know what I realized? I've been teaching English. I haven't been teaching communication." That's what these soft skills, this Tung Fu is. These are the communication skills we wish we had been taught back in school, along with math and science and history, because they transform the way we treat people, and they transform the way people treat us. How about one more technique? And then, Chris, I can't wait to hear from people who are joining us and your comments and success stories and questions. How about another story is that I was walking out on the foothills here in Boulder, and I passed by the soccer field, and I couldn't help and overhear the coach who was scolding his players. Well, you should have blocked him out. Well, you should have gone ahead and scored that goal because you were in position, and you should have run a little bit harder. And I could just see the shoulders of his players just kind of deflated and defeated, because over on the left, please put that word should. When people do something wrong, we have a choice of being a coach or a critic. We have a choice of shaming their behavior or shaping their behavior. We have a choice of them learning from their mistake or losing face over their mistake. And the word should makes people feel bad, and it doesn't teach them how to do it better. So over on the left, please put the word should and the ripple effect of that word when people make a mistake and we tell them what they should have done. Do you know anyone who can undo the past? And when we tell people what they should have done, they will resent us, even if what we're saying is right. They will resent us, especially if what we're saying is right. And it's because they can't undo it, and they feel like they're being shamed and they're losing face. Over on the right, please put the words next time, from now on, in the future. Because we say next time, if you're in the position to score a goal, go ahead and take that shot. Next time, block this player out so they can't get around you. Next time, just put in a burst of speed to give you a competitive advantage and some space between you and your pursuer. Now we're being a coach instead of a critic. Now we're shaping behavior instead of shaming it. Now people are learning from mistakes instead of losing face. And I will always remember there was a supervisor in one of my workshops, and he wasn't quite buying this. And he said, Sam, I have a lot of new hires. He said, I thought it was my job to correct their mistakes. And I said, when we correct people's mistakes, often we're pointing out what they're doing wrong. And I know as an athlete, if we focus on what we're doing wrong, we'll get more of the same. We want to focus on how to do it right next time instead of what they did wrong last time. And by the way, I think we have time for a 60-second story about this. I had the privilege of working with Rod Laver in the tennis industry on Hilton Head Island. Now, we used to put on national tennis camps, and we would do it for like 6 weeks straight, and they were very exhilarating and exhausting. So after we had finished a string of our national tennis camps, Rocket, and if you're a tennis player, he won the Grand Slam of tennis 2 times, Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open, all 4 of those majors in the same year, and he did it twice. So as a gift, he offered to rally with me one day. So he's making me work for it. He's pulling me right, he's pulling me left, he's running me back, and he hits a pretty short lob. I come up and I know if I hit this lob, if I hit this overhead, I'm going to go ahead and win a point. I'm going to win a game off Rocket. So in my eagerness, I commit the cardinal sin of overheads. Guess what that is? I took my eyes off the ball. I didn't keep my eyes on the ball. I looked where I was going to put the ball. Well, I didn't hit the ball. I missed the ball. Now, I was so pent up. You should have known better than that, Sam. How many times? When are you going to learn? Now, Rocket was known for sportsmanship, and he just kind of waited for me to calm down. And then he went like this, and I trundled over the net. And he said, Sam, champions never use the word should. They always focus on next time. Thank you, Rocket. And the next time someone makes a mistake, instead of shoulding all over them, which serves no good purpose, they resent us, they lose face, they feel shamed. From now on, in the future, next time, now we're being a coach instead of a critic. We're shaping performance instead of shaming it, and people are learning from those mistakes instead of losing face over them. All right, we're at a halfway point, and Chris, I bet you have some comments and questions. Can't wait to hear them.
Actually, we only have one right now, and this is from Jacqueline, and she says, for tip number 3, Will people feel unheard?
Oh, okay. So let's go back to tip number 3, right? Oh, very interesting. Okay, great question, Jacqueline. What we can say then is to paraphrase what people are saying, not to parrot it. Because if we parrot it, if we repeat it verbatim, people say, well, that's what I just said. However, if we paraphrase it and use these words, not, I know how frustrating it must be, or I know that this is upsetting, because that's presumptuous. And people say, you don't know how I feel. You don't know. Use the words, I can only imagine. I can only imagine, after putting in all this time and effort on this, how frustrating it is for us to switch gears. I can only imagine how you went above and beyond and have been working nights and weekends to handle this project, and then to have the client dissatisfied with it is not what you had hoped for. And the bridge is and at this point, the best use of our time is to figure out, clarify what that client wants again, clarify how we can come together to produce that so that we have a happy client, so they choose to continue to work with us. So Jacqueline, thank you for bringing that up. It is better to paraphrase what is said so people don't feel like we're not listening or that they're shut down or that it doesn't matter, and then to bridge to finding solutions instead of fault. Thanks, Chris. And thanks, Jacqueline.
Sam. And we actually do have another one, but first I want to encourage everyone to please use the chat feature or the Q&A feature. This is going to be a little bit interactive. And if you'd like to speak and actually say a few words, I can I can actually tell me in the chat feature, and I'll let you say a few words over the webinar here. But Teresa has a comment here, and I'm going to have to get up here close because it's a very small on my screen. Another one I use when someone is overstepping and you don't, and you want to say your mind and mind your own business, is to say, I appreciate your concert, or your concert, and appreciate your interest in or curiosity. She's from Canada, so the spelling's a little off. So thanks, Teresa.
And thank you. And see, the questions are, I love the questions because they are talking about how can we treat people with respect and civility and diplomacy and be proactive at the same time. So it's not an either or, it's both. And thank you for bringing in these responses that let people know that we really do hear them. We really have taken on board what they've said, and now we're moving to what we can do about it. So let's move on to our next tip, and that is this exercise, and we're going to save this exercise for the end. And I really like us to be proactive and to make tangible changes in the world. In fact, William Safire, who is a wonderful linguist, was once asked by a reporter, is ineffective communication due to ignorance or apathy? And he thought about it for a moment and he said, I don't know, and I don't care. I think we care about how we communicate. I really think we want to get along with people. What we may not know is that there are these things called fighting phrases. And these fighting phrases really do cause people to feel not seen, not heard. They'll get louder and angrier in an effort to make us listen to them and to show that we care. So please be thinking of a situation where you have had a challenging situation, or you see this happen in your office or in your family, and then in your Q&A, I would love to hear these scenarios and what you're going to do or what you're going to recommend to the people around you on how to handle it a little bit more effectively. All right, our next tip. And do you know anyone who likes to be ordered around? Please, over on the left, put the words, you'll need to and you'll have to. Well, you need to understand. Well, you have to fill this out before we can approve it. Well, you'll need to show me your medical card. Well, you'll need to talk with Charlie. He's the one in charge of that. When we tell people you need to, you have to, the resentment starts accumulating because a lot of times they're thinking, you're not the boss of me, even if we are. And it's because most people don't like to be ordered around. So what do we say instead? On the right, please put the words, if you would, or could you please? Now, I had an opportunity to work with Kaiser Permanente, and I'll always remember, because a year after our Tung Fu soft skills workshop is that I went back as a patient, and when I walked in, there was a woman behind the reception desk, and she looked around and there was no one in line or waiting or in the area, and she went like this. And I went over and she pointed, and there, taped under her reception desk where only she could see it, were the words to lose and the words to use. And she said, Sam, that workshop is the best training I've heard in the 20 years that I've worked here. She said, I'm the first point of contact for the hospital, and I'm really a polite person. And sometimes people were really rude to me, and I didn't understand it until I took your workshop, and I realized I used a lot of those words on the left. In particular, the you have to's. Well, you'll need to take this to section G. Well, I can't answer that. You'll have to bring that up with your doctor. Well, you'll need to call and get your x-rays and then bring them back with you when you come tomorrow. Well, you'll need to get your lab taken or your blood taken at the lab and then take the results to the nurse. She said, I was ordering people around from the moment they walked in the door. She said, all I had to do was just say, if you could please get your blood work taken and then take the results to the nurse. If you could please bring that up with the doctor and she'll be able to answer that for you. If you could please call the x-rays and she said, you know, Sam, you had said in your workshop that Ralph Waldo Emerson said, time is not so short, but that there is always time for courtesy. This turns commands into courteous request. And now I remember a physician who had been in that Kaiser workshop, and he pushed back. He said, Sam, when I'm in an operation, I am not going to be telling the nurse, can you please pass the scalpel? It's scalpel, stat. And see, I don't mean to speak in absolutes. Sometimes in an emergency, it is important to give an order and have people jump. However, he was the one who said, it's become a habit. He said, I go home and I treat my wife and my kids that way. Well, you have to get gas in the car on your way home. Well, you need to pick up the dog from the vet today. It's, well, you need to get that done before. And he said, I just realized how curt and the commanding that is. And these are the people I love. And I much rather be treating them with courteous request instead of giving them those curt commands. All right, let's go on to 7. Now, what if you have to say no? A lot of us are in a situation right now where we tell people, well, no, we can't open our doors. Well, no, we can't get that done for you this week because half of our team is telecommuting. And over on the left, please put the words, no, you can't because, or no, we can't because, no, we can't get this meeting started because we're still waiting for our AV equipment. No, you can't talk with Barbara, she's out sick this week. No, you can't start that project because we're still waiting for the supplies. When we tell people what they can't do or what we can't do, they feel like a verbal door is slamming in their face. Over on the right, please put the words, yes, as soon as, or yes, right after. Yes, we can start the meeting as soon as our AV equipment is here. And if it's not here in 5 minutes, we're going to start anyway. Yes, you can move ahead with that project. As soon as we get it approved and funded, then we'll be able to set that in motion. Yes, you can talk with Barbara. She's out sick this week. Would you prefer to leave a message or would you like to call back? Now, people will welcome this, and here's why. There was a woman in another public workshop. Her emotions, I could see, were traveling on her face. I said, what do you think? And she said, Sam, I'm a single mom. I have 3 kids under the age of 10. It seems like all I ever do is tell them no. No, you can't play with your friends because you haven't done your homework. No, you can't watch TV because you haven't done your chores. And then she does what's called stacking. You know the rules around here. That TV doesn't go on until those chores are done. How many times do I have to tell you, when are you going to off and running? Over on the right, she said, think about how it changes the dynamic of the relationship. This isn't just semantics or wordplay. If I say, yes, you can play with your friends as soon as you finish your homework, do your math, Let me have a look at it. Then you can go out and shoot hoops. Yes, you can watch TV as soon as you finish your chores. Pick up your room, take out the trash. Then you can turn on Simpsons or Discovery Channel. And she said, Sam, when I say yes, you can as soon as, who's responsible for what it is they want? They are. Instead of seeing me as the big meanie, blocking them from what it is they want, now they're in charge of getting what it is they want. Now, if I could read your mind or if I could see the chat, I bet you're saying, what if I can't give them? What if there is a no soon as? Well, over on the left, please put the words, there's nothing I can do. Or there's no way I can change this. Or it's not my decision. Because when we tell people, I'm sorry, there's no way I can change it. It's our policy. You know, I'm sorry, it's not my call. When we tell people there's nothing we can do, they feel we don't care. And that's when they get louder and angrier in an effort to make us care. Over on the right, please put the words, there's something and I wish. There's something I can suggest. I wish there were more I could do. In fact, we certify people in Tung Fu. We have certified trainers all around the world in different professions. And one of our certified trainers, Gwen Fujie, was in a situation where she was very close to her brother and her brother had been ignoring his health. And finally, he had serious problems and he went in to get an exhaustive series of tests. And he got a phone call from the doctor and he said, can you please come in tomorrow and please bring someone with you? And he knew that wasn't good news. And so Gwen went with her brother to the doctor, and without looking up, the brother kept his head, or the doctor kept his head down. He had the charts and the lab and the test results in front of him, and without looking up, he said, it's stage 4 cancer. We caught it too late. There's nothing we can do. And that was the end of the conversation. And Gwen wanted to reach across the desk and say, couldn't you at least say, I wish there was more I can do? Couldn't you at least say there's something I can suggest? Here is a support group of other people who are dealing with this. They often find it. You know, in the real world, we have to give bad news. And in the real world, if we say, I wish there were more I can do, there's something I can suggest. Or like my Aunt Kay, let me check into this. At least people know we care. Even if we can't change the circumstances, we can change the way we communicate them. Let's move on, please. Number 8 is a woman came up to me after workshop and she said, Sam, can we please add this word to your words to lose and words to use? It causes so many problems. I said, sure, what's the word? She said, that's the word. I said, no, what's the word that causes the problems? She said, yes. I felt like, who's on first? I said, what's the word that causes the problem? She said, the word problem. Please put the word problem over on the left. She said, everything's a problem with my husband. She said, we have our own flower shop. She said, we have staff meetings every morning to figure out our deliveries and who's responsible. And she says, my husband, if someone comes up and says, can I talk to you for a moment? Guess what he says? Sure. What's the problem? You know, after our meeting, he'll say, any other problems we need to talk about? If one of our delivery people said, you know, I'm done early, can I go ahead and leave early? Oh yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Or if we get a complaint, well, I have a problem with the way you handled that customer. She said last week, one of our newest employees really thanked him for mentoring her and said, I really appreciate it. I've learned more in this week than I have in a long time. Guess what he said? No problem. Hey, for many people, the word problem means something's wrong. And if we're using the word habitually and automatically and unintentionally, we're giving people the impression something is wrong, even when there's not. Over on the right, please put any word doesn't indicate something's wrong. So if someone comes up and says, can I talk to you about something? Sure. What's on your mind? Sure. What would you like to talk about? Sure. How can I help you? Instead of wrapping up meetings with any other problems we need to talk about, What else do we need to discuss? Anything else you want to bring up before we adjourn? If someone makes a request, instead of saying, I don't have a problem with that, you're welcome to do that. Yes, thanks for your initiative. And if someone thanks us, instead of brushing them off with a no problem, no worries, thank you. It means a lot that you took the time to share that feedback. I really appreciate it, so that we handle that compliment with grace instead of shrugging it off. Now, Chris, I see you coming back. Does that mean that we have another question?
We do, and actually it was posed a couple minutes ago before you went into tip number 8 about problems. So Lindsay actually has, when a new idea or solution to a proposed problem, they often hear the phrase, that makes me nervous. And a word that in her opinion is designed in the work culture to elicit a negative or stressful emotional response. So what advice do you have to that person who is really trying to convey, let's say, and how they possibly, how do you rephrase it?
I just love this question. Chris, if we had more time, often I do half-day workshops or full-day workshops. We actually have a slide that says what to say when people make a negative accusation. So let's pretend on your notes right now, the top of the slide is what to say if someone makes a negative accusation or they use a negative word, like that makes me nervous. Over on the left, whatever we do, do not repeat the negative word. Because if someone says, you women are so emotional, and we say, we're not emotional, now we are. If someone says, that makes me nervous, and you say, why does it make you nervous? We're doubling down, we're arguing their point. Over on the right, what we say is, what do you mean? What makes you say that? Why do you think that? Because it often gets to the root of the situation, and we can address that instead of reacting to the attack. Now, two quick examples of that. I'm speaking at a conference for women's leadership, and in the Q&A, a woman put her hand up and she said, Sam, why are women so catty to each other? And I said, ladies, we're going to Don Draper this. Don Draper said, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. We are never going to ask or answer that question again, because every time we do, we imprint and perpetuate that stereotype. We change the conversation. You say, you know what? We do not repeat the word. We say, you know what I found? Women are real champions of each other. In fact, I wouldn't have this contract if someone hadn't introduced me. You know what I found? Women support each other. So if someone says that makes me nervous, we can say, well, what makes you say that? And they may say, well, we tried this before last year and we lost a lot of money. Oh, now we thank him. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. We examined what happened last year. We identified what went wrong. We put systems in place to keep that from happening again. So when, if someone says, you don't care about your customers, we do too. We pride ourselves on our customer service. We just walk right into a debate arguing their point. Instead, what makes you say that? Well, I've left 3 messages and no one's gotten back in touch. I am so sorry that no one has responded to your messages. What was it that, and do you see how we move over to what we do want instead of imprinting and perpetuating what we don't?
Well, Richard has a comment here, which I find is very interesting, and people have actually said thank you to Richard for making that comment, he hates the use of the term no problem when people should actually say thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and all of us. It's that from now on, our antenna is up for these words to lose because we see the damage they do. And just last week, I had a real tech issue, and I had several big Zoom calls and podcasts and webinars to give. And someone at the end, helped me for an hour, troubleshoot it, figure out why this was going on. And at the end, I said a heartfelt, thank you so much for having the patience to talk me through this, to figure out what was going on, to fix it. I really want to thank you. Guess what he said? No problem. One of our goals is to have the grace of my Aunt Kay and to know that when we set the precedent, Albert Schweitzer said, in influencing others, example is not the main thing. It's the only thing. That's what we're trying to do with these soft skills, just to set an example of civility, diplomacy, proactivity, and respect. And when we do, people are often motivated to respond in kind. Now, I know, Chris, we have about 2 points, and then we open it up for questions in the last 10 minutes. Sound good?
That's perfect.
Okay. And now, what can we do if someone's really getting on our last nerve? If this is a really difficult person? Normally, I put a slide up if this is a live in-person convention or something like that, and the slide quotes Eleanor Roosevelt, who said that no one can make us feel inferior without our consent. And I modify that to say no one can make us mad without our consent. Well, there was a gruff construction boss who stood up and he said, "Sam, you're pulling a Pollyanna with this one." He said, "You have no idea the kind of people I work with." He said, "You mean if someone is yelling at me, that's not supposed to make me mad?" And a woman stood up in the workshop and she said, "I agree with that because I've lived through it." She said, "I'm a surgical nurse. I work with a neurosurgeon who is the most abrasive individual I have ever met. He is a brilliant physician. He has zip people skills." She said, "Last year, I was a fraction of a second late handing him an instrument in surgery. He berated me in front of my peers. He humiliated me in front of that team." She said, "It took all my professionalism just to continue with the operation and not walk out." She said, "When I was driving home, I started rehashing what he had said to me. I got so upset. I got home, I sat down at the dinner table. I told my husband what happened. I said, 'Oh, that doctor makes me mad.'" She said, "My husband had heard this before. He said, 'Judy, what time is it?' She said, 'It's 7:00. He said, 'What time did this happen?' She said, 9:00 this morning. He said, 'Judy, is it the doctor who's making you mad?' And with that, he got up and he left the dinner table. And she said, "I sat there and I thought about it and I realized it wasn't the doctor who was making me mad. The doctor wasn't even in the room. I was the one who'd given him a ride home in my car. I was the one who had set him a place at my dinner table." She said, "I decided that evening that never again was that doctor welcome in my home or in my head. And when I walked out, I was leaving him at the hospital, and never again was I giving him the power to poison my personal life." Now, in the Tung Fu book, and normally in a longer workshop, you're thinking, "Sam, I agree with that in theory. How do I do it in practice?" Well, there's all kinds of ways. If we are dealing with someone who has a pattern of verbal abuse, if we have someone who really is over the top with ongoing abusive behavior, how to document it, how to report it, how to strengthen numbers, etc. My question to you, though, is what is your philosophy? What is your ikigai, the Japanese, the reason, the purpose to get up in the morning? What is your code and creed by which you live by, so that you are crystal clear that you are going to be the quality of person you want to be, even when other people aren't? And our last tip, and then we've got some times for questions. Now, one time I was speaking to the hospitality industry, and there was an electrician for one of the hotels, and he put his hand up and he said, "Sam, you can't teach an old dog new tricks." He said, "I use all those words on the left all the time." He said, "I used them all in one sentence this morning." Now, if you're thinking, "Sam, these words are so entrenched, so automatic, it's too late." Actually, it's not too late to change a habit and acquire the skill of Tung Fu. And this little 1-minute exercise can show us how and why. Would you please write in your best handwriting, "I'm good at Tung Fu." Right now, I'm good at Tung Fu. Now, please write it with your other hand. I'm good at Tung Fu. Now, if we had a live session, I would ask you to swap notes and compare and look at each other and how does it look and how does it feel? And for now, here's the question. Would you agree that handwriting is a skill? Sure it is. We weren't born knowing how to do it. You know, we have to go through the 4 stages of learning. Would you agree that tongue fu is a skill? It is, just like handwriting, just like using the computer, just like playing tennis, just like driving a car. The first A in changing a habit or acquiring a new skill is aware. We become aware that but causes conflicts and that and creates cooperation. We become aware that telling people there's nothing I can do is going to make them angrier. So the first stage is A for aware. The second stage is awkward. It feels awkward. First time I stepped out on a tennis court, I'm spraying them all over the place. I didn't quit though. I didn't say I'm a terrible tennis player. I said, of course I'm not very good at it. I'm new at it. So we don't quit when it's awkward or uncomfortable. We go to the next stage of learning, which is applying. And if we apply the techniques we've been taught, we get better results. I think racket back, step into it, eyes on the ball, follow through. I can hit more strokes over the net. If we apply these techniques, if we keep them in sight, in mind, we actually post the words to lose and words to use right on our refrigerator, right by our laptop, right in our office, so that these ideas are in sight, in mind. It helps us catch and correct and apply them, and we get better results. We're reinforced and we're more motivated to do it in the future. And guess what? We can get to that final level of automatic. And at automatic, we just don't use the word problem anymore. Automatic is something goes wrong, we immediately find solutions instead of fault. People complain, we just jump into the A train instead of explaining. And when we do, when we use more of these words on the right instead of the ones on the left, we transform the way we treat people and we transform the way we treat us. Chris, I'm ready for these comments and questions and success stories, please.
All right. Well, Sam, I have to say thank you, first of all, because this is extremely helpful for me and my job in owning a company and being able to talk to clients and talk to employees and vendors. And I'm going to go out and buy your book, Tongue Fu. So I'm sure it'll come in 2 days on Amazon. But really appreciate you being here today. And one of the questions that was asked is, are these slides going to be available? And I wouldn't let everybody know that for the St. Louis PRSA chapter, we have a YouTube channel. And within 24 hours, this session will be, this webinar will be up on that YouTube channel. We also have a number of our other webinars that we produced over the last 15 weeks on whether it be how to start a podcast or how to use Wikipedia for your organization or race relations in America and why we're not okay. There's a whole number of topics ranging from ethics to branding yourself that I do encourage you to go to the St. Louis PRSA YouTube channel and actually sign up to subscribe to our channel so you get these updates moving forward. But every week we are doing these webinars. I don't see anyone asking questions, but please, I'm going to encourage you to write in the chat or write in the Q&A, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Or if you write that you'd like to say something, I'd like to make you live so you can ask a question with your actual voice versus typing in this very small script that I have to read real close to the screen. So again, Sam, I really do appreciate it. Is there any last words that you have?
You bet. It's you had asked if the slides are going to be available, and Tongue Fu is trademarked. This is a proprietary process that I've created over the years and hopefully distilled into very tight sound bites that are actionable and memorable. So if you would like to teach this, we have a certification program where you can be taught train the trainer program so that you can take this into your organizations or with your audiences. We have an e-course with 5-minute videos that you can bring into staff meetings that you can have for diversity inclusion programs. So the answer is these slides will be available for a short amount of time. And if you want to teach the techniques, thank you for giving credit to me and thank you for getting certified. And I really hope that they help you and your employees and the vendors and family members get along together, because that's the goal of this program. Thank you for asking.
So, and Sam, we know you flew through all of this very quickly, but one of the questions that Keely has is that going back, I think, to one of your first slides is what are the first A? Like, can you go through the A's again?
Sure.
Perfect.
It's A for aware. Or now are we talking about the A train, or are we talking about these 4 A's?
Let's do both.
I love it. When you Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Good answer, Chris. Let's do both. Good answer. Okay. So let's talk here. The 4 A's of how to change a habit or acquire a new skill. A for aware, A for awkward, A for applying, and A for automatic. And then let's go back to the A train. And I think it was, here we go. Good. Is the A train, A for agree, and agree is you're right. You're right. We were supposed to send that to you last week, and I'm sorry you didn't receive it as promised. A for apologize. Well, I already did that. So it's A for you're right, A for apologize, and A for act. Now, by the way, one time an ER, an EMR, emergency medical representative tech, EMT, said, Sam, sometimes we're not going to agree with people if they accuse us or complaining about something that's not true. He was an EMT in Hawaii, and he said, yesterday we had a drowning in Waikiki. And he said, it was gridlock there on Kalakaua Boulevard. He said, it took us a long time to get there. We should have been we were supposed to be 6 minutes away, and it took us almost 20 minutes to get there. And by the time we got there, it was too late. And the husband said, you could have saved her if you had gotten here earlier. Now, I'm not going to say you're right. In that case, we take the Express A train, which is, I am so sorry for your loss. And how can we help? Are there family members that we can call? Are there possessions that we can help you collect? So sometimes we do not agree if it opens us up to liability, or what they're saying is really untrue. We just skip to, I can only imagine how frustrating that is, or I am sorry for your loss, and here's, how can I help? And we skip over those words, you're right, if they're not appropriate in that situation.
So we do have a couple more questions here. Diane asked us a really good question is, what are your suggestions to handle a difficult customer who is not engaged? How do you encourage them to get engaged?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm just going to fill in the blanks here. Normally, I would ask a customer, is this virtually? Is this in person? Is this a long-time customer, first-time customer? When it says they're not engaged, do we mean that they're not buying, they're not responding to our calls? So see, normally I would get a lot more of those specifics so I can come up with language that is relevant to that situation. So I'm just going to take a guess, okay? Let's say that they're not engaged. Well, let's go online. Let's talk about we've emailed them and we have reached out to them several times and we're not hearing back. I believe when people aren't getting back, we look at ourselves. Are our emails too long? Are they feeling spammed? Is it very clear that we're trying to sell them and they don't want to have this conversation because they're overwhelmed, or they don't welcome that it seems like all we want is their money? So Richard Branson said, time is the new money. I think time is the new trust. I would get in touch and I would say, I can only imagine how busy you are, and we value your business, and may I have 3 minutes of your time? And when I say 3 minutes, I mean 3 minutes. We'd just like to call, find out if there is something we can do that would support you in this time, or that would help you with your launch, or that would help make that a success. And if for some reason you prefer not to have that conversation, I understand. And then I would move on to the 95% of people who are engaged instead of spending time on the 5% who are not.
So I think you've answered part of this question, but Diane has given a little bit more insight in that the general situation is that it's a project where it's a key stakeholder who won't take ownership, and it's a long-term project and a long-term customer that's not being engaged. And we do have a couple other questions, but I'll let you answer that one first.
Okay, so long-term project, this is a key stakeholder, and I imagine that this person is holding us up because we cannot move forward until we have his or her approval or input or something like that. And then I jump to the chase. I say, we need to move forward with this, and unless I hear from you otherwise, this is our decision. or we're launching this on our date. So we let them know we're moving forward. And unless we hear otherwise, this is what it's going to be. And if they care, they'll get in touch. And if they don't, and we move forward and they're not happy about it, they had their chance. And of course, that letter would be phrased very diplomatically. It wouldn't be as abrupt as I just said it.
So Sam, I'm going to ask you to fly to the end of your presentation where if someone needs to get a hold of you, they can. But we do have a question from Stephanie, but I want to make sure that if Diane has any further questions, she can actually email you. And what's the best way to get a hold of you there, Sam?
Is go ahead and you can get in touch with me at, I'm going to give you a direct address because this goes to our office. However, I really like PRSA. We're all in public relations. I feel a real affinity for the work you do. So the direct email of my office manager, business manager, is Sheri, C-H-E-R-I, Sheri, C-H-E-R-I, at Intrigue Agency.com. Now that goes directly to my business manager, and if you let her know that you are on this call, then she'll give that email a priority. So, and then of course you can check out my TEDx talks and my other books, Pop and Got Your Attention, are on my site intrigueagency.com, and Tung Fu Training Institute.com is where our certification program is, our e-courses that you can use for staff meetings. And so I look forward to hearing from you. And by the way, I love success stories. So if you use these techniques and you say, oh my goodness, I had a challenging employee who came up and actually thanked me, what a turnaround. Please share those with me. As you can tell, I like to, with your permission, share them in my programs so that they might serve as examples for other people hearing this information.
So Sam, we actually are running a little bit over. I hope you're able to stay just a couple more minutes to answer this last question, because I think it's a very important one. But I want to value everyone's time. And this has been actually the most amount of people that we've ever had on one of our webinars. We had 107 people register, and already we've gone a little bit over, but we still have a significant amount of those people still hanging in here for the rest of this webinar. But Stephanie asks a very important question, I think, for all of us, whether we're in meetings with clients or with other employees, is what's the best way to take criticism personally in a meeting?
Write it down. I started at the beginning, is that all of our authors said, ink it when you think it. And I learned this from a police officer. He said, if I'm at an accident and people are getting into it, well, you pulled in front of me. No, you ran the red light, back and forth. He said, you know what I would do? I pull out my notebook and I say, each of you will get your turn. And then I turned to one of them and I said, start at the beginning and tell me what happened. Because I have moved them from ranting and raving to reporting. Now they are objectively relating events instead of raging at me. And furthermore, when I take notes, I avert my eyes, so it's not this aggressive eye contact kind of stuff. And when I write it down, I am letting them know that I value what they're saying and that there is a record of it, and I am likely to follow up on it. So if someone is giving criticism in a meeting, I would say, what you're saying is important. Can I please write down the gist of what you're saying so that we can follow up on it, or so that I can talk about it with my team, or so that I can think about it overnight and get back to you with an informed answer. And writing something down is going to let that person know you're not brushing them off, that you're taking them seriously, and that there will be a response.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. I do want to encourage anybody that's still on this call, if you have suggestions for future webinars that you want to see us put on here, we're probably going to do this to the end of the year, each week, tackle a different subject. Please email me at chris@chemistrymultimedia.com. Again, that's chris@chemistrymultimedia.com. We do have some really good webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. We have one that's 10 marketing strategies to navigate COVID. The next one on September 3rd is going to be the art of adaptation in media, dealing with the transition and really focusing on diversity and inclusion in the media. And then we have a couple more that's posted. One is from John Goldberg, who runs an agency out of New York, a really amazing guy, a good friend of mine, is Where Danger Lurks, protecting against reputational crises from the inside out. So I hope you join us and subscribe to our YouTube channel and look at all the previous ones that we've done. But thanks again, Sam, for all your help here. And this was a wonderful session, and we truly appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to go buy that book, okay?
Thanks so much, Chris. It's Catherine Graham of the Washington Post said, to do what you love and feel that it matters, how could anything be more fun? The only thing that's more fun is to do what we love and feel that it matters and hear back from people and hear that they found it interesting and inspiring and useful. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Have a good one.